It's Inside Sports with your host, Harold Bell.
Well, Harold has been a crusader for the rights of black people all of his life. He has also been a crusader that has had a lot of friends, not only in the black community, but the white community in sports. And he's one of my friends over the years. We've done many things together. So Harold is truly a man that believes in his culture and his people and will always be that way because nobody's ever been able to change him. So, hey, that's my partner.
In the sports world today, everyone claims to be an insider. Harold Bell is the original insider. Washington Times sports columnist Dick Heller says Harold Bell is the godfather of sports talk, the good kind. He played message music such as Wake Up Everybody by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, What's Going On by his homeboy and friend Marvin Gaye, and the James Brown classic Black and Proud. He was the first on-air sports talk show personality to write commentaries and the first to host sports media roundtables. Harold Bell is the man for all seasons. He was the first sports media personality to involve pro athletes, politicians, judges, entertainers, and media personalities in his community endeavors. In November 1974, he became the first Afro-American to host and produce his own sports television special in prime time on NBC affiliate WRC-TV4 in Washington, D.C. His special guest, the greatest, Muhammad Ali.
And they say that friendship is like our shadows. They're sticking with you as long as you're in the sun, but once you cross over into the shade, the shadow disappears. How do you distinguish your friends?
Well, I wrote something once that says, friendship is a priceless gift that cannot be bought nor sold, but its value is far greater than a mountain made of gold. For gold is cold and lifeless, it can neither see nor hear. In time of trouble, it's powerless to cheer. It has no ears to listen, no heart to understand. It cannot bring you comfort or reach out a helping hand. So when you ask God for gifts, be thankful if he sends, not diamonds, pearls, or riches, but the love of real true friends.
This is something I believe. The heavyweight champion of the country, Ryan Boyd, of them all of you. To check out Inside Sports with my main man, Harold Bell. Inside Sports, it's a knockout.
August 28, 1963. 250,000 Americans, black and white, young and old, descend on the nation's capital in a show of solidarity. It was called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, but it would be remembered as a turning point in the fight for civil rights. Among the speakers, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who electrified the crowd with his stirring I Have a Dream speech.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
A few months earlier, racial tensions in the Deep South had erupted. News reports carried brutal images of fire hoses blasting at the backs of school children. President Kennedy had finally seen enough. In June of 1963, he presented sweeping civil rights legislation to Congress. Dr. King and others hoped a massive yet peaceful demonstration in Washington would spur passage of the bill. The city braced for violence, but their fears proved unfounded. The day of the march, more than 200,000 people gathered for a rally at the Washington Monument. It was the largest demonstration in the country's history. Arm in arm, they walked from the Washington Monument to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. There, performers as diverse as Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, and Mahalia Jackson lent their voices to the cause. Martin Luther King Jr. was the last to take the stage. He began with a reference to Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. which freed the slaves a century earlier.
But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free.
Partway through, King put aside his prepared text and shared with the protesters his dream of equal rights for all.
Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I lost my livelihood in farming. I couldn't farm. They took away the one thing that I really loved, and that was farming. That's what the USDA did.
He showed me a big tarp that had the words on it, "Nigger, go home."
The lack of commitment by too many people to not really caring whether we did justice or not.
Even as long as it's been, you know, we've experienced discrimination for a very, very long time, and most people would have given up. To this date, I haven't given up, and I never will give up, you know, until justice is served.
That's what my daddy would always say. He says I wasn't in trouble or anything. Everything was fine until I went up to defend my dad. And he says, what was I supposed to do? He says, I'm a man, and that's my daddy. I'm supposed to defend him.
He said, don't let USDA take my land. It was like anybody else, but just don't you let them have it. And we've done that. Nobody else has taken it either, but for sure the USDA will never get it.
Quite frankly, I say that the United States Department of Agriculture murdered them. My mother and father and my brother.
All right. Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is Zoom Sunday. And just think, we're celebrating today, 59 years, the March on Washington, D.C. What are we celebrating? You know, I just look around and I see what's happening to the black farmer. His land is still being stolen. Cops' war on black men continues. Black children are still last. My question is, who can we trust? And it's a funny thing how they keep picking our heroes for us. They tell us, the media tell us who our heroes should be. Time magazine came out. I just happened to be in CVS, so they picked up a prescription for my wife. And I looked over there on the newsstand and I saw Time magazine. So I said, well, let me flip through it while I'm standing here in line. In the middle of the magazine was this guy that they called the Kingmaker in Black America. The Kingmaker in Black America. And I said to myself, after I recognized the picture, who is he making kings for? Who is he the kingmaker of? And that's something that we have to take a hard look at today. And I want to say, you know, that we gotta take time out, folks, and really take a stand. Because my thing is always to call names. And I'm sitting here in front of you today. I'm a former presidential appointee by none other than Richard Nixon. And that happened in 1969. So, you know, the folks came out hard on me. They ain't say nothing to me, to my face. But Harold Bell's at the White House with Richard Nixon. Well, guess who beat me to the White House? Sammy Davis, Wilt Chamberlain, Jim Brown, George Foreman, Floyd Patterson, they beat me to the White House. So what are we talking about, man, when we are put in a position where we can help others? And by being a part of that Nixon White House, I was able to cross the aisle and work with politicians from across the aisle, both Democrat and Republicans. They helped me enhance my endeavors with young people. Just look at them, all of them. And a couple of them are missing. I didn't have no more room for the pictures. But man, we got to figure out how can we bring the Republicans and Democrats together. One of my buddies told me, he said, Harold, it's all about money. It's greed. That is what is controlling everything. I want my co-host and the guy who's the MVP of, as far as I'm concerned, of Zoom Week. He's the CEO and founder of BlackMenInAmerica.com. He's the editor and engineer for this show, and he has been in the media business for well over 20 years now. I would like to say welcome to my co-host, Gary Johnson. And also joining us today, who will be our narrator, is a former high school teammate of mine that grew up with me here in Washington, D.C., and we played high school ball together. And he has been an advocate for the Black farmer for now well over 2 decades, man. And talking about a guy really being in the struggle, I want to welcome my dear friend, Mr. Lawrence Lucas. Come on in, Lawrence. How you doing, babe?
Hello, hi. Pleased to be here with you this evening, and the Black farmers deal with this subject.
Go ahead, Lawrence, take it.
Okay. I also want to thank the farmers for being on the line. I noticed that we have Ms. Bernice Atkinson, we got Michael Stovall, and I just got a call from Corey Lee. He's going to chime in. And we have a member of our Justice for Black Farmer group, Waymon Hinson from Texas. And but I want to thank Harold Bell for putting on this quickly arranged day for Black farmers to speak out. I'm very pleased to see that we have President of the NAACP, Richard Ross, on the line, and I thank him for putting his time, his busy schedule aside to be with us today. And here again, Gary Johnson, who makes all this happen. What I would like to do first is to have the farmers. We have some farmers on the line, and I'd like for you to introduce yourselves. But I also want to say that we're expecting maybe a few more. So we are looking forward to, if we don't get everything covered that we want, which I don't think we can in a short time, we're looking forward to putting together a show of 1 hour to an hour and a half that's dedicated to just the Black farmers speaking out. And Mr. Ross, Mr. Rose, when we do that, we would like to have you to participate with us.
I'd be happy to. In fact,
okay.
Let me introduce Richard, since you brought him in already. I was holding him back for a minute, but anyway, Richard Rose has been a brother in the struggle, man, 24/7. You know, he's been president of the Atlanta NAACP chapter for 8 years. He's out of Clark College, and you talking about a brother that's really been out there doing it. Last time I saw Richard, he had black hair. Now he got all white. I say, boy, they really been on it. But Richard, you know, I love you, man, and I thank you for taking time out to be here with us, because I know you are well aware of what the Black farmer has been going through, and also what's happening in Atlanta with cops and justice and just us. So we're going to be talking to Richard a few minutes later about that's what's going on. Okay, Lawrence, take back over. Lawrence?
You're on mute. Unmute.
Let me get off mute.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
What I'd like to do is I would like to have the farmers and our other supporters just say just a few words about, and we'll get into the substance later, but I'd like to just get the people on the line to introduce themselves to talk about this issue, and then we'll get into a little more time about the details. I would like to start with Mrs. Bernice Atkinson. Could you quickly introduce yourself and what state that you're from? It has to be very short. Okay, Ms. Atkinson, maybe we lost her in the mix here. So we do have Michael Stovall from Alabama. Michael, just give people, the listening public, a little idea, your involvement and what state you're from. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, the host and hostess of people. My name is Michael Stovall. I'm from Town Creek, Alabama, and I've been in this movement for 29 years, fighting for justice with the finding of discrimination. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that y'all take the time to bring this issue to the forefront because it's long overdue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Waymon.
Good afternoon, Waymon Hinson, living in North Texas. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I'm a storyteller, gatherer of stories, co-producer with Sean Hill, the documentary that you saw the trailer for just a moment ago. Living in this space and hearing stories of Black farmers since 1994, knowing that Black farmers continue to die, continue to fail to see justice. And with the current bill, I think there's some challenges there. The previous bill had its challenges, but we must be about the business of justice for Black farmers. And we must be about the business of telling stories in spaces where people need to hear about them.
Okay, thank you very much. I know Mr. Blount, he's on the line. He's not one of the farmers. I didn't meet him until I got on the show with Harold Bell. Mr. Blount, you know a lot about the Black farmer issue, so we're gonna let you chime in and kind of, you tell what you're all about and your concern about Black farmers and what state you're in.
Get off mute.
Every Sunday we have to tell Mr. Blount.
Unmute yourself there, Mr. Blount.
Mr. Blount has a problem with mute.
Lower left-hand corner.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in the state of New York, upstate New York, Rochester, New York. But anyway, I was born and raised in Virginia, a little small town called Smithfield, and we didn't even have a red light. But my grandfather was a farmer because he was born in 1891 before tractors even evolved. So when I look at Mr. Rose, I can definitely relate to what he's going through because I had to harvest peanuts. I had to help plant them, help harvest them, pick the weeds out of them, and then take them to the plant to sell them in the fall of the year. But I want to say this because this is extremely important. I had the opportunity to interview Arthur Lewis. He was knighted by the Queen of England, Sir Arthur Lewis, because he got a Nobel Peace Prize in agricultural economics. Wow. And you know what his theme was? How are we going to feed ourselves on this planet Earth? So, because the agriculture, the advances that have been made in agriculture because of scientific discovery, the ability to increase your yield and hopefully get a decent price for your products and your goods and services so you can sustain yourself. But I would say because of the advances that farmers have made, the humanity is dependent on it. We can see what happens when people run out of food, and whether it's China, whether it's Africa. China has 1.4 billion people. If 100 million of them in the ruling elite, another 300 to 50 million of them in the middle class, the upper middle class, the lower middle class. That's 900 to 950 million people that's got to figure out where their next meal is going to come from. And if the Chinese authorities don't figure out a way to feed them, they're going to have a problem. Charles Dickens wrote about that years ago, The Tale of Two Cities, the best of times, the worst of times.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. We have Mrs. Bernice Atkinson. Mrs. Atkinson has been a leader in with regard to Black farmers. I remember after one of the hearings about 20 years ago, we joined her and she allowed us to jump in her cab and ride back to USDA while she was on her way back after testifying at a hearing. Ms. Atkinson, if you can unmute yourself, we would like for you to say a few words, not the details right now, but kind of introduce yourself just briefly and what state you're from. But yeah, I'd like for you to unmute yourself.
Lower left-hand corner, click on that microphone.
Okay.
There
now,
we go.
can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
Gotcha.
Well, you know, I was telling some young people as they were looking at some pictures in our view book that it's a long ways from the mule and the buggy and the wagon to a computer. That's a long journey, but by the grace of God, he has brought me here.
All right.
You know, when I look at USDA, they have taken our livelihood and they've held us hostage for all of these years. I've been in this thing about 40 years this year, but representing by appointment of the court for the last 22 years, I've been appointed to represent the 66,000 Black farmers that were denied entry into Pickford, which was unjust, unfair, and there were so many untruths in it, but we could not get them to deal with the facts that we were putting on the table. But in spite of the adversities, we still love the land and we fight for the right to feed ourselves. And this is what we are doing today. We are fighting for the right to feed ourselves and to leave a legacy for our children. This does not have to be complicated because the case has been tried and it has been settled, and USDA has admitted that they did us wrong. And because of that, it should be very simple for them to go in and really fix these problems. All they would have to do is just sign the doggone check. Sign the check. We are big girls and boys now. We ain't no more little boys and girls playing in the mud pie stage. We can rule and we can set rules and regulation, due process of the law, and abide by that due process and take care of ourselves. Just sign the doggone check. That's all we need. You have admitted your guilt. You owe us. And because you owe us, you need to pay us. And you don't need to be doing it 6 months to a year from now. You need to do it right now. If you can do it for the whites in 30 days, you can do it for us in 90 to 120 days. So get it done.
Wow.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson, for that detail. And what she's talking about is the new what was once was the Justice for Black Farmer Act is now, she was referring to the American Rescue Plan Act that was signed on March, around March 15th of this year by President Biden. We got Michael Stovall on the line. Michael, this is a good opportunity for you to share a little more detail about what's going on with this act, what's going on with the poor leadership in the country, both Black, white, and political, and what is going on with reference to you and what's going on with Black farmers, and then we'll go to Mr. Waymon Hinson.
Well, Black farmers have lost several millions of dollars of land and income from their farming operation, and they always tie us up with the white farmers, and we don't never get due process. It's just like giving us the hog head and the chillers at the feet and tell us to get in the back of the bus. So what can $500,000 do for a Black farmer and lost millions of dollars today? So those are the problems that I have with this bill. I have that problem with these bills because these farmers have lost so much. And ain't no way in the world that $500,000 can do justice for farmers that lost millions of dollars. You know, we have people that's supposed to be looking out for the best of the Black farmers, and they settle for pennies, and we done lost millions of dollars, and I don't think it's fair. I've been fighting this madness for 29 years with the finding of discrimination, and I know many farmers has been fighting before then. You know, I was 29 years old, but $500,000 is no money today when it comes down to these Black farmers and lost millions of dollars. Some of these Black farmers been waiting for 40 and 50 years to try to get justice. I've seen so many Black farmers died trying to get justice from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we have leadership like John Boyd and many other ones and sold the Black farmers out for many, many, many years. We started out fighting for justice for Black farmers. They take a little money on the table just to be hushed. And CNN and NBC would only interview John Boyd. So John Boyd get the money and run, for the Black farmers never get justice. And we also had people that's in the civil rights office that should have been looking out for the Black farmers. Black farmers went to them begging and crying to try to save their farm. Black farmers lost their land and they lost their inheritance to the children, and a lot of them are dead today because of the people that stand high and look low and never allow the Black farmers to get justice. These days and time is 2022, and we still going to the back of the bus with a hog head, some powdered children, hog feet, and they telling us to get the hell to the back of the bus because they had to include all the white farmers and everybody else to bring justice for the Black farmers that never get justice. And I fought the Justice Department for allowing this to go on for 50 and 60 years and beyond. Black farmers are losing millions and thousands and millions of acres of land because of the wrongdoing of the USDA. I might not have the numbers quite right, but I know it's up in the thousands of acres. We do over $300 trillion because of losses, but they want you to take $500,000. You can't even hardly buy a decent tractor and a combiner for that. Not only the land. Farmland is running from $7,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 an acre. That's what kind of land we lost today. But they want us to take tenants, and we have representatives that's getting out there telling you, boy, you better take this money, you might not get nothing. I'd rather not have a damn thing if I have to take $500,000 because it can't do a damn thing for me today. We need representatives going to represent the farmers. Let the farmers get due process. Let the farmers get due process. And that's the problem I have with leaders that's out there telling us what we better take. And the civil rights people that worked in the civil rights office, farmers went to them begging and crying to them, and they never settled their cases. I don't have to call no names, they know who they are. Those are the problems we have today. As Black farmers, we need leaderships don't look out for the rest of the Black farmers. Bring some of the land back into the community. Start a new program. Give the land back to them that you stole away. I lost 732 acres in one tract, 150 in another tract, 156 in another tract, 80 in another tract. Run me off the land, the USDA locked the gates and closed me out of the farm, killed my cows, brought me on animal cruelty charges, and I beat all that. I have a finding of discrimination, a breach of settlement agreement. Got chicken houses never got running. They over $4 million for the 2 chicken houses, supposed to have been 6. They killed all the livestock and run me out of business. I'm on food stamps right today. I draw $841 a month, and I get $200 for food stamps. That's all I get. Many farmers have suffered, and we need to stop putting a bandage on a sore. We need to stop allowing Black people that's supposed to be speaking for Black folks to sell us out and allow us to get a hog feet and a hog head and get in the hell in the back of the bus. We need to stop that. We do due process just as well as anybody else. We need to stop taking pennies on the dollar when these farmers have lost millions and thousands of acres of land over the years. I know farmers are dead in the grave. One, Mr. Harry Young, they took his farm, almost 300 acres of land with minerals, and he died trying to fight his land. Come to find out, land had been paid for 25 years, and USDA took the land and foreclosed on the land when the money was already there and already paid for. And the USDA employee put it in a separate account so it wouldn't go toward the mortgage. The money was sitting there all the time. Those are the type of problems we have. And then we got people worked in the civil rights office, know the rights from wrong. We're gonna tell you $500,000 is the best we can do. And that's an insult. That's an insult. And we got people in Washington don't give a shit about the Black farmer. And we've been white farmers, we've been paid a long time ago. We've been back on the land. White farmers go out here and buy land after land after land. And under the Trump administration, they got so many billions of dollars, they went out and bought extra farms. A good farm right now gonna cost you over $1 million. Some of them $2 and $3 million. Some of them $5 million. What in the world can you do with $500,000? It's always putting us on the back of the damn bus. We sick and tired of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Stovall.
Okay.
I think Mr. Stovall and Ms. Atkinson, brother, hit it right on the head. Because Ms. Atkinson, you were talking about from the move to the computers, and you mentioned the combines. You know, when guys are harvesting wheat or corn, they're sitting up in a combine that costs $300,000 to $400,000, $500,000, depending on how much digitized equipment. And the guy has a laptop computer looking at the futures market, trying to lock in a price. That's a commodities market. So this farming has become digitized. It has become specialized. And because of the ability to get high yields off the same amount of land because of advances in agriculture technology. And for the ag department to be acting like that, that's unacceptable. All I can say is what Frederick Douglass said 150 years ago. Power concedes to nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will.
Right. Okay.
And we are going to demand our due process right, which they broke, our constitutional right, our fundamental due process right has all been broken, and somebody need to be held accountable for them.
I agree.
Thank you.
I lost 278 acres of land because of this tobacco, and it wasn't no cause for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Hey, Waymon, I'd like for you to wait. And Mr. Muhammad Robbalaa is on from Oklahoma. Hit you on mute. Okay, there we go. Waymon, thank you. I'm gonna let Mr. Robbalaa go first, if you don't mind.
First of all, peace be unto everybody that's on this program this afternoon. I'm sorry I'm late. Man, just can't get it together. That's Eastern time versus Central time. You know, it's kind of sometimes you kind of forget that we're not in the same time zone. But anyway, I'm thankful to God. I just heard what the brother what he said, that the power receives nothing without a demand, which is very true. But I want to say this. This is our time. Don't let anything shake you, because this is our time. I know you all have heard that Uganda has come up with a strike of over $20 trillion worth of gold, and that's just an estimate. So it's just a matter of time before certain people will be coming to us, ask us, can they help? Now, you know, all the rest of the world has been given out a good land to farm and all of that. That's why they're taking the black folks' land, because we have not poisoned the land to death. The land has been poisoned to where it won't produce anything. And if you look at the disasters that's happening in America today, you'll say, well, what's going on? Starvation is on us, brother, because you can't, in my state, the state of Oklahoma, you can't raise anything down here when you're having at nighttime 85 to 90 degrees, in the daytime 105 degrees. That's impossible to raise anything, soybeans or anything. So only time we can raise anything is in the wintertime, when the winter wheat, that's about it. And if you don't have irrigation system at that point, you still are not going to raise anything. Now, let me say this. I've planted tomatoes 3 years in a row. I have not made a crop of tomatoes yet. They said tomatoes can withstand heat. That's a lie. That is not true. I watered my tomatoes. In fact, I might have put too much water on them, but I have not made any tomatoes. Now, I can make peas at any state. I have made some purple herb peas. That is for real. And we lost 650 acres basically when we were farming. I don't talk about it too much because I know God is in control. And if it was intentional for us to do it, but we did have a lot of opposition out there that was in direct opposite of what God wanted us to be. We did lose 2 tractors. All our equipment was brand new. From 1978 up until 1983, we were buying equipment, new equipment. We didn't buy any used stuff. We believe in now put our smell inside that cab tractor, and that's what we did. And we used help. We did not miss one payment to USDA back in 1978 up through 1983, not one payment. Now, don't forget, now my brother had a big farm in the state of Michigan, Eaton County, Michigan, 253 acres. Now, land was really precious up there. That was good farmland. He sold that land and transferred here to Oklahoma, where we really got into it. And we raised wheat, beef cattle, and was trying to get into the slaughtering business. For 42 years, I've tried to get into slaughtering business. There's not another one in the United States of America. Allow slaughtering. I'm still trying, brothers. I want you all to know that.
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go with Mr. Hinson. Then I want to bring in Richard. I want Richard to do the last half hour. Come on in, Mr. Hinson, and we need to hear from you.
With 2 or 3 thoughts. When I listened to Stovall, and I listened to Ms. Atchison, and listened to Mr. Robbalaa, then I feel like I need to shut up and listen, because I can talk all day long about statistics and how many farmers there were back in 1920 and how many acres of land has been lost and the value of those and that sort of thing. But it's only when we really begin to hear the stories of people who are on the land, love the land, their DNA is on the land, their blood is on the land, that we really grasp how serious a deal this is. And I believe that white America doesn't really care. And I think that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems with our congressional folks. I think there's an absence of political courage on behalf of both sides of the aisle. I think there is an absence of political courage on behalf of white people and Black people. I only hear of what Senator Booker is doing and what Senator Warnock is doing. And I hear what Senator Warren is doing. And we know what she's done all the way back to 2019, when we kind of called her out and said, no, Black farmers aren't losing their land because of the heirs property issue. They're losing their land because of malfeasance on the part of the USDA. And she stopped in her tracks. She engaged us. Did she not, Lawrence? She engaged us thanks to your leadership. And she developed the law, the Justice for Black Farmers Act of 2020 and then 2021 that Warnock was able to pull 2 pieces out of and plug into the American Rescue Plan Act. And then, thanks to a bunch of frivolous and racist white lawsuits around the country, the money that was there for debt relief for Black farmers under Section 1005 of the American Rescue Plan Act, it got buried. it got buried in the courts. And the USDA, I think, did not have the political courage to take off their gloves and duke it out with those farmers. Now, those farmers claimed reverse discrimination. But when I find out how many dollars they got from subsidies, from coronavirus relief funds, and from the failed tariff war with China, as compared to what's going on with Ms. Atchison and Mr. Stovall and Mr. Robbalaa, then they are just full of crap. They are pulling a political stunt in the courts, and the USDA and DOJ are letting them get by with it. Now, I'm not terribly pleased with the way this IRA of 2022 has spun out, but I recognize why it is that Booker and Warnock and all the other senators had to do it that way. And I really agree with what Mr. Stovall said a few moments ago, that it really is off the backs of Black suffering that white farmers are going to get some debt relief. They had to do away with the language. And we were warned about that, were we not, Lawrence? We were warned about that back when we were dealing with Joe Biden's transition team, when one of his political people, one of his lawyer folks says, what you're asking for is unconstitutional. And then lo and behold, look at where we are now. And so I'll shut up, but let me just say one more time that our people in Washington, D.C. lack the political courage to get things done. And it's not just the white folks, and I can nail the white folks because I'm a white folk, but I can also talk critically about the Black folks because I see what they're not doing that they could be doing. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, I want to do this real quick. I want to go out here with this, and I'm gonna come to Richard Rose and take it so he can take the last 30 minutes. Somebody tell me, was there anyone in the room doing pig feet foot one in between two with Bill Sack when the Black farmers were there and they said, well, we just want $50,000. And Bill Sack said, what? And he got up and said, that's all you want? And he left the room. Can anybody verify that? That they were the Black farmers who took $50,000, man, as a payoff, and nobody said anything. Can anybody verify that? Who was in that room? Waymon, can you tell us who was in that room?
No, I don't know who was in that room.
Okay, Robbalaa, can you tell us who was in the room? Ms. Atkinson?
We had an economist to figure out our damages, brother, and it wasn't nothing like no 50.
Okay, okay. Ms.
Michael Stovall.
Michael Stovall, can you tell us who was in that room?
Well, actually, there was John Boyd and Ralph Page, and I think Leroy Smith was in that room. But what
Tom
really
Burrell
was
too.
happening, John Boyd was the one that led that because he was trying to get on Pickford 2 the money for the farmers so he can get a cut of it from the lawyers.
Wow.
See, we have to look at a lot of situations. These farmers have been sold out. Let me tell you something. The farmers are older people. Most of them farmers was in their 80s, 90s years old. These was old folks. And if they would have fixed Pickford 1, you wouldn't have need a Pickford 2. Mm-hmm. John Boyd cut a deal with the U.S. Department of Agriculture because he was running around the country trying to get this Pickford 2. Why do you need a Pickford 2 if you would fix Pickford 1? You know what need to be fixed. All you were doing is throwing money out there for the lawyers and for the Black farmers to continue to lose the land. It was about the land. It wasn't about anything else but the land. And people like John Boyd, the NAACP, a lot of these people have sold the Black farmers out. Al Sharpton, Minister Farrakhan, and many, many more have supposed to have been leading the Black farmers and sold the Black farmers out because they got to realize these Black farmers was older people. A lot of these people was old, and a lot of them didn't quite understand. So the leadership was the one that sold the black farmers out. And that's what happened.
Brother, thank you so
Harold,
much.
let me weigh in and say a yes and to what Stovall is saying. There were over 22,000 black farmers who applied for admission into the Pigford 1 class. 16,000 were admitted into the class. And everything that I've been told says that the farmers did not want $50,000 because even back in '99, that wouldn't buy a whole lot. What they wanted was debt relief. And this gives me chill bumps to say that there were 16,000 black farmers who were admitted into the Pigford 1 class, but only 371 got debt relief.
Wow.
They wanted debt relief. They didn't want the $50,000. That was chump change, my words, not theirs. But they wanted debt relief, and through the machinations of the court, through Pyries and all those lawyers who did not allow for discovery to be held, and for all those due processes to go through, only 371 got debt relief. And that's why we continue to fight, because those farmers deserve debt relief. And some of them are on the screen in front of us this afternoon. 371 out of 16,000. That ought to take your breath away.
Man, let me say something. Let me say something as well.
Come on, Mr. Stovall, come on.
These farmers wanted debt relief, but they wanted their damages. Now, they rather have debt relief than $50,000 because $50,000 can pay the debts off. If they want to take $50,000 of debt relief, they rather have debt relief because their debts was more than that, and they had already forced them out of business. They wanted the actual damages, really. That's what they really wanted. But they know $50,000 can do a poop thing for them, so they picked debt relief versus $50,000. But they wanted debt relief plus the settlement money.
Let Ms. Atkinson say a few words, Harold.
Come on, Ms. Atkinson.
I'm listening at this, and as you know, I was called to testify in the 2004 congressional hearing, and I jumped up and got the book just a few minutes ago with the testimony in it that they sent me. Now, Alexander Pyrie, Chestnut, and Judge Freeman, Ralph Page, John Boyd, and Tom Burrell, all of them are responsible for this debacle.
Wow.
Now, Alexander Pyrie went in and he told Judge Freeman that he was going to do it his way, no matter what Judge Freeman said. I don't know what he had over Judge Freeman, but Freeman could not do nothing with Alexander Pyrie. Got a chance to meet him, got a chance to talk with him, and told him, give him some information, some proof of certain things. And Pyrie went into, if you would read that September hearing, you will find where Pyrie just told Judge Freeman where to go. And he was going to do it the way he wanted to do it, no matter what they did. Yes, they was the one going around training these folks to get these here claimants instead of farmers. They did that. They did that.
Who was Pyrie, Ms. Atkinson? Who was Pyrie?
Pyrie, Alexander Pyrie was the class counselor, head class counselor. Chestnut was the assistant. Chestnut was the one who said, get them niggas $50,000 and let them go on about their business.
Wow.
Chestnut told me himself. And he told me, he said, you know, you're just like a thorn. I said, yeah. And every time you move, I'm going to prick you. Because I told him under the Constitution, he had broken our due constitutional right. He had broken due process, and the fundamental rights had not been upheld. When I went to the 2004 hearing, the Judiciary Committee put it in writing that the due process was not upheld, my constitutional rights were broken, and I was not given fundamental rights. They denied me, saying that I had not contacted a U.S. official. Now, if I'm testifying before the Judiciary Committee and all of those boys that are on the court, and if I'm dealing with Howard Heflin and Richard Shelby, dealing with the peoples here in the state of Alabama, which is your Secretary of State, also the governor, who was George Wallace, who appointed me to be the first black jury commissioner in the state of Alabama, then who is government officials?
That's right.
But that's what they denied me. I have my denial paper. It said denied because you did not contact a U.S. official.
You are an official.
Atkinson, thanks so much, Lawrence. We got to go because I want to give my man 30 minutes, man. We can come back with this. You guys, we can come back with this anytime, because this is information I know people don't really have a hold of. And right now, I want to thank you, Lawrence, and all the everybody that participate. But I want you to stay around, because I want to go right now to Richard Rose, and he, you know, what this brother has done with the NAACP in Atlanta chapter, and what he has gone through in the past week has been hell. And I want to say, you know, there's a lack of accountability in the continued practice of killing black men. I mean, this is big too. So Richard had to go and have a press conference, and he was joined by the family of Nigel Collins, discussed the case of Collins and Rashad Brooks. Now, I know y'all just heard about what happened with Rashad Brooks. Collins was shot and killed by police at a Buckhead restaurant on May 17, 2022. Brooks was shot in the back and killed while fleeing police on foot in the parking lot of a Wendy's restaurant in Atlanta in June 2020. Now, this was less than 3 weeks after George Floyd died at the hands of police in Minneapolis. Now, these are important statistics. I want you folks to listen to this. The rate of shootings remains steadily, remains the same nationwide. Police have shot and killed almost the same number of people annually, nearly 1,000 per year since 2014 to 2022, according to the Washington Post. Now, Black Americans are killed at a much higher rate than white Americans by white police officers. Black Americans are shot at a disproportionate rate. We account for less than 13% of the US population, but are killed by police at more than twice the rate of white Americans. Hispanic Americans are also killed by police at a disproportionate rate. Now, most victims are young males, and overwhelmingly majority of people shot and killed by police are male, over 95%. More than half the victims are between 20 and 40 years old. So I want to bring in Richard Rose now to tell us the trials and tribulations that he's been going through with police killings in Atlanta and what's been happening all around this country. And it doesn't seem like there's no change coming. Come on in, Richard.
So thanks again, for having me. Yeah, we are in a situation that the only thing has changed is that we have video cameras now. We got body cameras that show us what's going on. In the past, we didn't know. They were misquoting and basically just straight out lying about it. And even with this technology, they try to bend it to fit their own narrative. For example, in the killing of Rashad Brooks, they talk about where he brandished a weapon, where he took one of the, once they attacked him, he took one of the lasers, but they only shoot twice, and they had been shot twice. So it didn't have any effect at all. He could have been a cap pistol for the damage it could have caused. And so we continue, and of course the initial part of it, Rashad Brooks was asleep in the Wendy's drive-through. So really, even though he was drunk and asleep,
he was not on the city street, so they didn't really even have a case for driving while intoxicated because he wasn't driving and he wasn't on public streets. And so a lot of things could have happened. And there's another case in Atlanta where a white guy was also drunk in another drive-through. They towed his car and told him to walk home. They could have done that for Rashard Brooks, but we don't get the grace. We are still in America and with governments that promote racism. And you know, why did I say that? Think about this. The federal government spends millions of dollars a year maintaining Confederate monuments that were built to declare white supremacy. So, and these are not monuments from the Civil War. These are monuments from the 20th century, most of them, that were built, many of them in the wake of civil rights gains. For example, Stone Mountain in Georgia was a mountain owned by a family. It was a rock quarry. The Klan used to meet there. And in 1956, in 56, after Brown versus Board of Education, the governor said, long as I'm governor, colored children would not be in the classroom with white children. And he bought that mountain, started, and tried to restart the carvings just to send a message to Black folk that white folk, we still in charge, you are still less than human. So we continue to have that problem. In Atlanta, for example, we will be asking the U.S. attorney to initiate a patterns and practice investigation of Atlanta, because the pattern and practice is that Black men are being killed, unarmed Black men are being killed at an alarming rate. We have, I mean, there is several a year. And so we just got to stop that. The latest one with Nigel Collins was that he was a man, was having a manic episode. His mother called the police and said, my son is having an episode. He does have a weapon. Please, you know, I don't know where he's gone. And so he showed up at a restaurant where he had worked at one time and was treated discourteously. So he went to the buffet, got a plate, and sat down at the bar. They called the police, and they couldn't say, and they said, well, did he point the gun? They said, no. And of course, in Georgia, it's open carry. Even Black folks are entitled to carry a weapon. I think it's a dangerous practice, but we, you know, it's open carry. That's the law. And so that they sent the police in, they tased him. They tried to talk him down. They should have called psychologists or psychiatrists into it. It was a mental health crisis here. Our 911 system is ripe for Black abuse. There's only three options. If your house is on fire, call the fire department. If you're having a medical crisis, call the EMT. Everything else, they send the police, and it results too many times in tragedy. You know, just east of Atlanta, a Black man was, a veteran was having an episode. He was walking down the street naked, just like he came into the world. But the policeman claimed he was threatened by this man and shot and killed him. Now he did get prosecuted, but he got prosecuted for manslaughter. Should have been prosecuted for murder. We have to change policing in America. We have to change policing, because all of these things, there is a structure and a pattern of white supremacy, of Black oppression, of racism, and we have to deal with all of these issues, including the farmers, including the monuments, including police, including every facet of the structure, education. Every part of the structure of America has racist elements in it, and as long as we are quiet about it, it will not change. Silence gives consent, and in Atlanta, we just will not be silent. I promise you.
Let me ask you something, Richard. Does it make any difference of having Black chief police imposition, because, you know, just recently, this brother in Boston, being a cop, was undercover, and at an episode, his white colleagues beat him almost to death and left him there. So now he is 25 years later, he comes back and he's the chief of the department. And I'm always thinking, where are the black cops, man, when these white cops out there are shooting black brothers down? Where are the white cops? I mean, where are the black brothers supposed to say, hey, man, you cannot do that on my watch. That's what my brother did. You ain't doing that on my watch. Where are the black officers and the black administrators, Richard?
Well, unfortunately, they assume a we versus us mentality.
Right, that's right.
Where they band with those in uniform,
that's right,
against the members of the community. I had a conversation with an FBI agent a few weeks ago, and I pointed out to them, I said, listen, how many of you, it's two men and one woman. I said, how many of you are members of the NAACP? How many of you are even members, alumni of your alumni association, wherever you went to college? They have to quit separating themselves with their new alliance, because that is a major problem that we will continue to talk about. Even if it's a black police chief, if the system is racist, it gives a pass to those white cops. Clearly, how many times do we see a black policeman shooting at a white person, period? Unless that person has brandished a gun, we never see that. So if they have the same training, there must be another element involved in it. And I believe that it is the system of white supremacy in America that we must face up to, we must reject it, and that must be a part of reparations. Same as the farmers. Reparations means, from the root word of reparation is repair. We have to repair America. And remember now, slavers wrote the Constitution of the United States.
That's right. That's right. Come on in, somebody else. Come on in, ask Richard a question. Anybody else got a question for Richard? Come on in.
Just to tell Richard, we inherited a flawed Constitution from the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I see Mr. Blount. Are you trying to say something, Mr. Blount? You're on mute.
Mr. Blount, you're on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Blount.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We have you.
We had a young guy who came police chief, African-American, and we had a George Floyd incident in this little small town 3 months before George Floyd. He got upset because the mayor fired him. Now he's running as a Republican, talking all that conservative stuff.
That's something, yeah.
The Constitution, I was an ex-police chief, I know. I mean, things are out of hand. You see how he got all twisted up? That so-called wall of silence.
Yeah,
he won't win.
Wall of silence, right.
He won't win, but he's worse than the conservatives who's talking all that like we don't have global warming. Who's from Texas down there anytime downtown Dallas is flooding out? Now that ought to tell you something. Dallas, Texas. It is not a major river in Dallas. It's a small river. Downtown Dallas is flooding out and we don't have a problem. Come on, your brain's been fried or something is wrong.
Well, they live in a state of denial where they deny the facts and they carry a narrative. You know, we got a guy running for senator here in Georgia, and he said we have too many trees. He's running on the Republican ticket.
Hey, that's not the ex-football player.
That is the ex-football player.
Okay, well, he's been hit in the head too much. We know what his problem is.
Hey, Gary, let's run that video on the new chief of police in Boston. Do we have that, Gary?
Yeah, I got that. Here we go.
A team exclusive, an undercover Boston police officer beaten by fellow officers after being mistaken as a suspect. Now, 25 years later, Michael Cox is a police chief. As chief investigator Cheryl Fiandaca tells us, he has kept quiet about that night for his entire career until now.
I recall hearing that, you know, when the hitting and beating was going on, that someone said, "Stop, he's a cop."
It was January 1995. Then Boston police officer Michael Cox and his partner were working undercover in the gang unit when they got a radio call about a shooting in Roxbury and a description of the getaway car.
We were able to catch up with the car. And I got out the car and chased him. One of the subjects, he jumped up and over the fence.
Michael was right behind him, but just as he started to climb the fence,
I had hit the back of the head, and I turned around. I think I had hit in the front of the head, and yeah, I started to get kicked, punched, hit, and by multiple sides all at once. I kind of remember kind of trying to get up, and at some point seeing like a silhouette of a police officer.
3 Boston police officers were slightly injured.
mistaken for a suspect, Michael was severely beaten.
These were fellow officers. These were your colleagues that did this to you.
Yes.
He was left on the ground until members of his own unit arrived and called for EMS.
They told me I was pretty unrecognizable. I was kind of left out there, and I couldn't understand, why a person would, or people would do that. I'm sure I didn't put up any resistance.
But Michael, who suffered head injuries and kidney damage, says the department put up plenty of resistance and tried to cover up what happened.
Nobody was found responsible anyway for, the criminal activity that occurred.
And it didn't end there. Late-night threatening phone calls and slashed tires, just some of what Michael says his family was subjected to at the hands of the police.
It was clear that, these people wanted me gone. I was like, this is not going to stop. Even if I leave, it's not going to stop.
You stayed with the department.
Yes.
And over 30 years, rose to the highest uniform rank in the Boston Police.
I'm excited.
Last year, he became the chief in Ann Arbor, and until now, rarely talked about that cold January night. But in the wake of the George Floyd murder and the calls for police reform and defunding, he says it's time.
I think there's a need for it now, so people understand that there's people in police departments that get it. I get it in every level. I've been both a victim, I'm a person of color. I know it, I've seen, what it's like, in departments when they fail in this way.
Who do you serve?
You hear the word defund. I don't know of anything that's ever gotten better in this world when it was defunded. Usually you invest in something, and then that's how it gets better.
It would take a civil rights lawsuit for Michael to be compensated. Not bitter, he still believes the job he loves will continue to attract diverse people who want to help their communities. Cheryl Fiandaca, WBZ News.
All right. So clearly we know that is not an aberration. We got to understand we have to, I don't call it defunding police, but I call it restructuring public safety from the ground up. I think that every police chief ought to be fired and rehired based on the new paradigm, which is not that that you put somebody you take a guy with a GED, send him to a police academy for 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden he comes out with all this power. That's absolutely, we know that's not going to work. And remember, there are only 2 objectives of oppression: deprivation, take away your resource and deny you opportunity to get resources. That's what we do with the farmers. And degradation, to deny your humanity, take away your self-worth. And but 2 objectives to oppression. And these police departments are adept at both of them. When you arrest a person, you take away his or her livelihood. They can't go to work. They got to bond out. They got to hire a lawyer. All of those things are part of a 400-year policy of oppressing people of African descent. And unless that's why they are so afraid of critical race theory, because they don't want to be called into question. Critical race theory, as we mentioned, should point out that all of the founders of the so-called founding fathers were slave owners. They were racist to the core. And so we had to continue to band together. In Georgia, we were able to elect two senators to overthrow the Republican senators by banding together. The 100 Black Men, the Divine Nine, the Prince Hall Mason, the Eastern Stars, the Links, the NAACP, Black Voters Matter, Urban League, we all were talking every week to talk about how we want to attack this get out the vote effort, and we will do it again. But we have to come together. I don't know how the farmers have been organized, but I'd love to talk to somebody to see what we can do and bring together the NAACP state presidents and local chapters, local branches to get together, because nothing much happens from the top down. It's got to go bottom up. That's how we win these fights, bottom up.
Yeah. Well, we got to get out of here, man.
Harold, I'd like to ask him a question or make a statement. I think the same political code of silence that exists in the department, in these departments of justice and police around the country, you have the same similar code of justice in the political world when it deals with the issue of this racism, especially that racism that exists at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and exists against Black farmers. We need more accountability, and we need more transparency on behalf of our Black leadership, and not allow these Black farmers to suffer another day without getting paid debt relief and other at the hands of an administration that claim they care about Black people and they care about our vote.
Well, hey, you got the last word there, Luke. And I want to ask all of you Black farmers, can any of you guys use a kingmaker that the Time magazine put out there? James Clyburn, they say he's the kingmaker. Is he helping any Black farmers? Is he going up and say, hey man, we need to take a hard look at these police departments around the country? He got the president's ear. You see him up there, even with Obama. Obama couldn't move without Clyburn up his butt. It's the same thing with Biden, man. We got to hold these folks that call themselves the kingmakers, and the folks who's supposed to be leaders in our community, we got to call them into play, man. Right here in PG County, we got the same thing going on. These guys take on the characteristics of the oppressors once they get that big job. So, man, once again, Richard, I want to Michael.
Let me say something about Prince George County and the police department. There was a sheriff in Prince George County, and Black guys were being arrested in that department, and they were showing up 6 months later in the Anacostia River. Most of y'all don't know where that is, but that dumps into the Potomac River if you're not from Washington.
Yeah.
4 or 5 of them 6 months later. What happened? The Washington Post did an article about it. What's going on out there? One young Black kid got arrested, rented a department, and he knew their history. Somehow his son worked in that department, in that Prince George department, as a sheriff, and another guy, and they got into a tussle. He took the gun from both of them and shot and killed both of them in the police station. And the father had a nervous breakdown. And see, all of that stuff came back to bite him right in the butt, unfortunately, because he was almost an accessory to his own son's murder. So you got to be careful what you do out here in this world. It'll come back and bite you.
Oh, well. Hey, man, once again, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Gary. I want to thank Luke. I want to thank Richard. Look, Michael Stovall, Miss Atkinson, come back anytime that you want, because this information needs to get out, man. We got to start protecting ourselves. And you got to remember that every Black face you see is not your brother or sister. And you cannot soar with eagles when you hang out with chickens. And that's what thank you, Gary. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Be safe. Enjoy it.
Thank you.